You want to talk about Marty Supreme? You want to talk about the ring light reflecting in my glasses? It's gonna do that this whole time. We're just gonna have to deal with it. Okay? That's just it's just what it's gonna be. It's just what it's gonna be, man. Listen, I'm not mad. I'm not stressing. That's just what it's gonna be. So Marty Supreme. It's about the illusion of meritocracy under capitalism. Alright, I'll start this by saying I've done no research into like the actual intent of the offers. So I'm purely speaking from watching the film, watching the movie, and saying with what I took, and just going with that. I've intentionally avoided looking at like what did the actual director mean. I'm just going based on what I took away. So Martin Mauser, the main character of Marty Supreme himself, is a Jewish American table tennis player who is loosely based on a real-life ping pong pro, Marty Reisman, of the same era of mid-20th century post-World War II. And the fact of the story is Marty is really good at table tennis. That's not a question. He is among the best in the world and gunning for undisputed best in the world. And the struggle of the story is not a question of if he can be the best, nearly as much as what it takes for him to get to have a seat at the table to prove that he is one of the best. How can he survive in the world until he gets there? And some of those obstacles are self-inflicted from the fact that Marty is a self-righteous jackass, but much of it is also systemic and class-based. So what the story illustrates is the ways in which society is a rough landscape of diamonds that may never get to shine. And I think Wally is a great example of this because based on what we see, he's no worse at table tennis than the competitors that Marty is facing at these World Championship tournaments, based on him giving Marty competitive matches when he's practicing. But Wally doesn't go to these tournaments for the fact that, you know, he's got responsibilities, he's got a job, he's got a family he's got to provide for, on top of being a black man in America before the Civil Rights Act. I also just want to praise Tyler Creator for a second because I've been a fan of Tyler since I was 16, so I'm very familiar with who he is, his essence, his personality. I was completely taken out of that. It did not feel like I was watching Tyler Creator do a guest spot. I felt like I was watching Wally. He brought that character to life. This wasn't Tyler getting a role because his boyfriend was the star. He actually clocked in. So like, big respect on that. And I go back a lot to thinking about Wally when I look at Marty's struggles throughout the film, because Marty spends a majority of the film on a razor's edge, pushing his luck to the absolute limit financially, socially, legally, financially again. And a lot of that luck comes from the fact that he is a conventionally attractive, charismatic white boy. And we cannot forget that this is the 1950s. Like, we see Timothy eating out Gwyneth Paltrow in the park, they get caught by police, and then they manage to bribe their way out. If that was Tyler Creator, that would not have happened. Tyler Creator in the 1950s performed fellatio on an Aryan wealthy actress that we don't even want to think about how that would end up. So I'm just going to go out on a limb and say, despite the fact that Marty is Jewish, therefore part of a marginalized group, he manages to rely a lot on social privilege by appearing to just be a regular old white guy, to face the blowback from his crazy plans and then make it to the next one, because he's got a lot of crazy. And I do want to make it clear, this film does not pass the Bechdel test, but in a way that kind of makes it period accurate. Case Stone, Gwyneth Paltrow's character, really hits the peak of that by being a successful, famous actress and then marrying up to a wealthy billionaire piece of shit who she doesn't even like to like reach high society. Yo, actually, I just want to add this part in real quick. Literally a piece of shit. The guy who plays the billionaire character, Mr. Rockwell, in this film is Kevin O'Leary, who's building a data center in Utah right now, who is looking to have like insane fucking environmental effects. So genuinely, Kevin O'Leary is a piece of shit. Which is one of the ways in which this film illustrates, intentionally or not, that success in society is not based on skill, based on talent, or hard work, nearly as much as it is based on luck and circumstances. The luck to be born in the right body, in the right place, at the right time, to the right family, to have the privilege of your strengths being displayed and appraised based purely on merit, and not just based on your identity, who you are, and where you fall in society. So let me give my take on privilege real quick, because I know that it's become a dirty word and a lot of people get triggered by even the mention of it. I don't believe that privilege should be resented. I think it should be equitable. To live in equitable society is one where privileges are universal and adjusted to provide a secure and dignified life to all. Hassan Piker has been a popular topic of discussion recently, and he's often called a hypocrite for being financially well off while opposing capitalism in favor of socialism. And I also use the phrase well off deliberately instead of wealthy or even rich, because the lifestyle Hassan Hassan Piker lives is not something that should be a pipe dream. Owning a home big enough to house his immediate family with a pool, a dog, an electric car, and some designer clothes is not something that I would argue even scratches the surface of being rich. It is certainly nowhere near wealthy. When I was growing up, I had classmates who lived even more luxurious lifestyles because their dad had a moderately successful HVAC business while their mom stayed at home. Now, in hindsight, were those people probably higher up on the social ladder than I perceived at the time? Yeah, probably. I didn't fully grasp what the difference meant between my third-hand car that I'd end up driving for a decade after and some of my classmates driving brand new Chargers and Corvettes, or even the difference from me to my classmates working at McDonald's to buy a beater off Facebook Marketplace. It didn't occur to me until later in life how much of a wealth gap there actually was between me and my peers, being equidistant between some of the roughest neighborhoods in Detroit and McMansion Manors. However, those kids driving brand new Corvettes are not Jeff Bezos. Their families making probably $500,000 a year, probably adjusting to a couple $1,000,000 today for inflation, are not the same as the people who are making that much every couple of minutes. So I don't look at Hassan making that much and think he is being hypocritical for saying why I think that his lifestyle should at least be realistic, a realistic expectation for every working member of society. Nor do I resent him for living as he does. I do resent him for being tall though. Really, man? 6'4"? How about you stop hoarding the height, buddy, and start redistributing those inches, pal? But to make my point short, I see privilege not as something that should be a special treatment, but as a level of security, opportunity, safety, and overall well-being that should be as universal as we can make it. And in that world, maybe meritocracy is a reality, but in reality, I don't believe it is. The plot of Marty Supreme is about Marty having to face the reality that his skills and charisma are not going to make up for his social class. They're not going to erase the added time and effort that being in poverty costs you on a daily basis. And even if he's fucking a rich dude's wife behind his back, he's still gonna have to show his ass and be publicly humiliated just for the opportunity to get on stage and prove himself. Simply for the fact that this man was born into wealth and therefore social power, and Marty was not. Like, this entire movie is just a humiliation ritual for a guy who thinks that he deserves to have the merit of his talent recognized when he comes from a low-income apartment with shared utilities. It portrays how the real power and leverage in society is reserved for those who own capital, and how that ownership dwarfs being the best in the world at a growing niche. So I find Endo to be an interesting contrast because he is a deft table tennis savant who acts as the final boss to Marty, trying to prove that he is the best table tennis player in the world. And it does seem as though Endo has some level of social advantage over Marty, and I want to chalk that up to being a cultural difference between America and Japan, but I'm gonna be honest, I'm not entirely confident in that claim. Japan is certainly not a utopia, as it is still a capitalist society with a brutal work culture, but they contrast rugged American individualism with a collectivist community first social attitude. So a disabled prodigy like Endo would likely have more support socially from society in general in his efforts in Japan compared to Marty, who has to spend more time pleading his case to investors than actually practicing his craft and getting better. And there is also a social incentive in Japan to actually be excellent at what you do, as opposed to the work smarter, not harder mentality of Americans that I've spent most of my life just watching become a justification for mediocrity, as long as those numbers on the board are going up. Hard work in this country is actually discouraged in favor of exploiting any opportunity you can get to get ahead. And that's also why the social contract is in the gutter these days, because morally and ethically nefarious behavior is incentivized if it means a big cash out. If I'm getting paid, who cares if I'm a terrible person? So ultimately, Marty Supreme is about a generationally gifted athlete who is the very best at something that people are invested in, but because of the instability of his life due to his background of poverty and having to resort to desperate measures because the times for him are always desperate, he is not so easily welcomed into the luxury of being the best at a sport. He has to move mountains just to stand on stage, and all he can do is try to prove without any doubt that he is the best. But at the end of the day, the only way he can get any of the resources he needs to actually achieve any of these goals, to not even achieve, but just to show that he can achieve these goals, is to swallow his dignity and be humiliated at the behest of capitalism. Of course, he is a bit of an asshole. Like, he is not a likable character. If I met Marty Mauser at a party, I would leave being like, yo, what was that guy's problem? But despite that, I find myself consistently rooting for Marty in his journey, because I could recognize that the odds he was up against were the result of much darker forces ingrained in our society than him having a grating personality. It was also the grating personality definitely not doing him any favors, but I digress. He is not a perfect victim, but he is still a victim. He is still producing value through a unique and trained skill, while wealthy and powerful masters will not allow him to liquidate that value into a material benefit, unless he debases and humiliates himself for a share of that. And like I said, I have no idea if the authors actually meant this message. I don't know what their intention was, but I do think one of the first scenes in the movie exemplifies this. So Marty is promoted to manager at his shoe sales shop, despite telling his uncle, who owns the shop, that he doesn't want the position, and he's only working there to afford his trip to London so he can play the World Championship at Wembley Stadium. But before Marty's trip, his uncle skips out on him, doesn't give him the money he needs, trying to force him to stay and lose the opportunity and have to be just stuck there taking the position. So Marty holds his coworker Lloyd at gunpoint to get the money from the vault, and even with a gun to his head, Lloyd doesn't budge at first. And what ends up convincing Lloyd to hand the money over is Marty is showing Lloyd the manager card that his uncle gave him, telling him plainly that Lloyd has worked at the store longer. He cares more about this job, about the store, than Marty does. But Marty walked in, did the bare minimum to get a promotion before him and be his boss. And at that point, if Marty wanted to, he could fire Lloyd just because. And that's not fair. And he was harping on how that is unfair, and Lloyd should just give him the money to be rid of him. He can snitch and get him fired later, but why are you willing to literally take a bullet for this job that doesn't care about you? Which is very real. At my last job, not at my job itself, but up the street, there was a Chipotle that got robbed and someone took a bullet, and I was like, why would you be taking a bullet for Chipotle? Just let them take the guacamole. What are you doing? I've been very fortunate in my life to pursue dreams and make some commendable progress, but ultimately I always find myself stuck in the same place. So I understand and relate to the struggle of Mr. Supreme. For every dream I've been able to say I achieved, it never allowed me to wake up to the life that I hoped for. And as I got older, I started to learn that a lot of the personalities that I looked up to had difficult lives as they walked back through the curtain, especially when my tastes tend to gravitate towards countercultures and alternatives where there's bound to be less money. I've met heroes and role models who had to take extra work, sleep on couches, avoid debt collectors, self-medicate, because being in the spotlight doesn't always mean that you're getting to live the sweet life. And it takes a lot of money to buy your way out of the responsibilities that make life so hard sometimes. People dedicate their lives to accomplishing their idea of greatness with no promise of fortune. And I'd even propose the idea that in our current organization of society, the economy, that ambition is kind of a curse. Unless your ambition is something that directly means like you're taking money out of people's pockets, if you have a genuine talent and passion for something that doesn't seek to extract as much money as possible, then you're likely going to be a starving artist of some sort, if not one of the many marks being ripped off, whether you like it or not. And even just within a field, within the specific metrics of being within the field and trying to do your best in that, who is to say that the best are going to get a chance to shine? And who is to say there wasn't a better table tennis player out there who wasn't as charismatic or pretty or unhinged as Marty to get themselves an opportunity to be out in front of the world? And I think even Endo is a good example of that. Like, there's a mention of the Japanese travel ban and all that stuff where Japan actually went out of their way to support Endo in representing them on the world stage of ping pong. And he had so much privilege in the idea of just the fact that society was behind him. Society wanted him to succeed. So how good could Marty have been if he actually had the sponsors and support that he needed? How good could have Wally been if he did not have the responsibilities pulling him away from the sport? And for the cast that we see, there is a strong sense of these are the people who made it. These are the people who weren't just good enough to be here, but survived through all of life's trials and tribulations. And on the flip side, this also recontextualizes what really matters in life, because for all the effort that Marty went through to prove that he is the best table tennis player in the world, after all the mountains he moved, the moment that was most cathartic for him was coming home to his unmoved life and seeing his newborn child for the first time. There's an inherently human drive, I believe, to accomplish great things. But after all is said and done, we have to ask ourselves what we're really doing it all for. So why am I doing this? What is the whole mission here for? This is for Venus. My name is Tommy, and thank you for watching.
I work so hard and do it all just to take a wrong step and fall. If I